Hello, my dear craftswomen. Today we will make such a rose. I have a lot of them, but we will do one. The rosette is very interesting and effective, while it does not take up a lot of tissue. It can be both interior and corsage. It can be used for hair, for dress, in general, anywhere. We need everything that is on my table to make this beautiful rose. This is a whole set. A lot of things, but let's start in order. The tissues. Natural silk crepe satin number 14. It is thicker than number 10 and really good for this rose. I really love crepe satins in all forms. It is very good for this rose because here we use the petals in one layer, and it is good when the fabric is thicker and very plastic. We can replace it with natural Davidovsky silk satin. He will behave perfectly in this rose. We can replace natural satin with silk, but it is more rigid. Crepe satin is perfect. We can try to make from a dense crepe, it is more dense. We can try feather satin in this rose as well. In general, a replacement can be found. As usual, we use satin and yuzu on the leaves and plywood. I have painted or unpainted. Satin AA, Satin 12,000, Wedding Atlas, Davidovsky Atlas, in general, everything you have. The fabric should be smart. We can use velvet, cerulong. There is always choice for leaves. A40W soldering iron with a cross-sectional diameter of 6 mm. Scissors, wire cutters, stapler and a piece of cotton for winding the core. We will wind the cotton center with the wire number 24. Wire number 28 is for leaves, either green or white, and then painted. Wire number 33 is for the petals. Wires without winding. It is thick enough to grow stems. Ribbon, silk ribbon for twigs. Tweezers with curved edges. And all tweezers for curling petals. Tools. A brass tip 2 centimeters in diameter. A narrow heel from a set of knives. A single knife from the main set and an ultra-thin Japanese knife, no matter is it smooth or streaked. There are few tools used. 2 pillows, semi-rigid and soft. Glass of piece of plastic folder. Toothbrush. Paints. Brushes. Paints can be powder, Davidovsky, drip Japanese. In general, it depends on what you have. There may be even, especially for beginners, Gamma Hobby Batak firms. Perhaps this is the worst option, but nonetheless, but at first you can use them. Glue. Perhaps the whole basic set that is useful to us. And longer we are carefully watching your hands at the workshop and listen to what I say. If I suddenly forgot something, then I will definitely say this is the video tutorial. First of all, we need to cut out the petals. leaves, and gluing to make this rose. We paint the petals, leaves in general, all the details. I do not get tired of repeating it. This is a very important point. We cut out all the details obliquely. Look, I left especially a small piece of fabric on which I circled our petal pattern. We apply approximately at an angle of 45 degrees, approximately. I folded the fabric in 2 layers. This is crepe satin number 14. You can use crepe satin number 10 and satin number 10. The Davido's Atlas has proven itself perfectly. You can use Fiso satin in general. You can replace a lot with anything. The main thing is that the fabric is not very thin. You see, something is barely visible through it. A fabric with a beautiful silky sheen is perfect for this rose. The fabric is folded in 2 layers. We folded and attached a pattern. I drew it on one layer and another near the corner I fastened with a paper clip. So we cut out all the petals, then cut them, cut off from each other, and then completely cut off the pen or pencil along the contour. We cut it so clean without any trace after cutting. Be very careful that the contour does not remain in those cases if you plan to make the rose light. In our case, it is bright and there should be no trace of contours here, of course. The same thing we do with leaves and pasting, only cut out all in one layer. We usually take a denser fabric that is not transparent on foliage. We will paint one by one. In the same way, we arrange it along the oblique, like this. Leaves on the oblique and pasting on the oblique, like this. Make as we have the finger of the central pasting at an angle of 45 degrees. We put it on our piece of fabric as convenient for us. We circle and cut everything in a single copy. Please pay attention. First, we separate it like the petals. Then we cut the leaves with scissors. Tightly approach the base, the bottom corner. We don't need extra fabric here. We retreat about 1 millimeter and cut out approximately along the contour. We do not cut out all the close and corners of the leaves, so that later we will not sprinkle during painting, processing and plywood. We restick, then cut off, and until we cut the leaves with a margin, reduce to no to the bottom corner. We cut out both small and large leaves. At the beginning, I also simply glued the paste from the common piece of fabric. We cut it all out with a margin too. Here we're not about to go deep into the fingers. It is all of the individual parts that are connected only below. The more the pasting is cut out in a single piece, the easier it will be for us to glue it, and then we will fix it after we glue everything. The pasting was cut out. Do not forget that we need to prepare a piece of thin fabric. This is a hagoroma. Pay attention how transparent the fabric is. It is very good for pasting. It practically does not give excess stiffness to leaves and it's good in processing. It pours a little, practically does not crumble. We need to prepare a piece of yuzu or haguroma, or if you do not have Japanese fabrics, foulard, excelsior, organza, blended or natural, are also suitable. The piece should be of such a size that it fits all our leaves and passing. We will not glue the petals. We have 2 large leaves in this rose, 6 small and 1 pasting. My piece is cut off already. It was not prepared for these leaves, but as an example. Cut out the size that fits your number of parts. Now, after we cut out everything we need, we remove the patterns to the side so that they do not interfere with us and proceed to painting. Now we are going to paint the petals. Our petals will be painted a little differently. Despite the fact that we have petals all the same size, there are petals that will be in the center and there are those that will be outside. Be sure to remember that the center is always brighter than those located outside. Please note, I spread 2 types of paint. Yellow one for 50 milliliters of water. It only appears so bright in a white bowl, but in fact it is pale. We use a little bit of red, only the base of the bowl closes. Here we will paint this rose with such 2 colors. You can add green if you want. But also light to color the base of the petals below. So, this yellow color will be the basis. Instead of water, we wash all our petals. Crepsatin, in addition to all its wonderful qualities, gets wet very well, although it is quite dense. Just that number 14 in density is comparable with the Davidovsky Atlas. I love it too, like all kinds of crepsatin. Petals get wet marvelously. Look, they are barely yellow. Now, there is one more thing. We take a brush, soak it in plain water, and these upper edges are slightly washed off with their paint. This is practically not noticeable because the paint is quite light, but nevertheless, it will be visible. When we have all this dry, a slight color transition will be visible. I have here, for example, 12 petals. You should get 10 pairs per rose according to the pattern. I highly recommend making this rose in 3 pieces at once. You probably already feel comfortable in the assembly by the 3rd rose. After being painted with yellow paint, 4 pairs are painted over the edge, possibly with a shift, diluted with scarlet color. We do it in half. I do in 3 out of 6 pairs. We take 4-5 pairs for 1 rose. We paint it over brightly. We wash it off with simple water so that there are no obvious transitions, and these petals will be in the center, which are bright. And the remaining petals we're barely touching, color and quickly blur. They should turn yellow, but with a very slight touch of pinkish. When we mix red and yellow, we get a coral color. It turns out a very beautiful color. That is all. After we have painted it all, put it on a dry newspaper to dry. If you wish, you can tint these corners in green for a change. This time I did not, but no one forbids experimenting with color. After we painted the petals, we need to paint the wire number 33. We proceed from the fact that we will re-glue not a couple of petals on the wire, and each petal one for each wire. Also, all petals that are light will be glued to the wire. The bright ones will remain in the middle. They don't need wire, and the pale ones need wire because they will surround the middle. You should have 10, 12 pieces left on the wire. You can plant 12 petals on the wire. We will cut the wire into 3 parts because we need 4 wires. We paint them in yellow. Just a bunch, dry, boldly paint. We sent it to dry. We figured out with the petals. Now it's the turn of leaf painting and gluing. I spread 2 colors. One color is more, the other is less, and it is more saturated. This color is green emerald and 1/3 added to it is brown. If you have 15 drops of green, then 5 drops of brown to it, it turns out like this is green, but already towards the olive color. Coolish color. The second color is brown, literally 10 milliliters of water here, a drop of purple and black. It turns out such an incomprehensible color of wet asphalt. It will be used for the accents of our greenery. We lay out the leaves and the gluing in front of us. Remember that it is very convenient to draw contours with a ballpoint pen, since it does not blur. Don't be afraid. We painted green on the back side of the gluing. It will immediately stain the leaves in blue. You can take turns, first with some details to understand and then with others. We painted, now set the accents to brown. With strokes, we do not paint over the whole so that they go differently on the petals. It should be eroded somewhere, but not much. It is exactly the same with leaves. The base is darker and exactly the same on the sides. Another leaf has another barrel, You can make the middle brighter at third one. We blur as we like. Add if it is not enough. The newspaper got wet and it all went to the assembly. We do not need assembly. Press the brush. Well, that's enough. This is what we do with all the leaves and pasting. If you turned on the front side and you do not like something in the paint, then you can fix it. Do not forget that you need to control what you paint from the front. This is a process that constantly requires monitoring. We shift to dry. Wires number 26, 27, 28 is suitable for leaves. I use number 28, mostly painted. If you don't have a dyed one, then we just tag the necessary amount of wire. We need half wire for large leaves and 1/3 wire for small ones. The whole bunch is painted in the color of the leaves. You can mix. In the beginning paint it in green and then in this color. Although one green will be enough. After we figured out the leaves, we need to paint two parts. It remains to dye the duplicate fabric. If you do not have a finished one, then we paint the piece that we need in size. Paint. Now I will remove the small brush and take a larger one. At an angle of 45 degrees, we add the color brown, blur green in some places. We are not afraid. The duplicate fabric is so thin that all our experiments with color mixing are visible and will not. We are smearing. Don't be afraid. We send it to dry. We find the fabric. It is practically not visible on the newspaper and shift to dry. In addition, there is another point. If you don't have a ready-made silk ribbon, then when cutting a piece of duplicate fabric, you need to leave more of it, which you need in order to then cut the strips in a straight line. So place the leaves and glue and there will be room to cut the strips. Make it in a straight line, 5-6 mm, and cut, then to wrap the stem. If you have a ribbon, then we take a small amount of it. 15 centimeters is enough for one light. So we think. A 30 centimeter long ribbon will suit us. Tape painting is very simple. You can just put it in a bowl and the tape is ready. You can straighten it or you cannot straighten it. It will straighten itself. We send it to the newspaper. You can, for emphasis, walk on it with bright paint. The fabric is very thin And all this will not be noticeable. It is for general background only. When we wrap the stem, it will be the color of our leaves. There is one more point. Since we have an interior rose, we must make stems for it. We draw the stems at an angle of 45 degrees on a piece of fabric. We determine the length ourselves. If you want to make the stems shorter, then cut it shorter. If longer, then longer. The approximate width of the tape is somewhere between 10–12 millimeters, maximum 15 millimeters. I drew two. Cut one piece on the handle. I cut it as I painted. I will cut later. It is not very comfortable because I drew on a large piece of fabric. It is convenient when the piece is smaller. Now, like all the previous details, we paint in green. We need a good wet. Add brown on one side. This side will fit the pasting so that they match. Smear it at the top. It will be up. Now we have painted everything. Cut everything out and almost the most interesting remains. Processing and assembly.